Hello, welcome back to my fave fanfics. Here, I post, well, my favorite fanfictions, if that wasn't obvious. I do hope you'll enjoy them as much as I do. Please like and subscribe for more content. Without further ado, let's get started.
Welcome, my dear faves, to the fourth part of What If Wanderer Ended Up in the World of My Hero Academia. Credit goes to Phantom Fox 19 for this fantastic fanfic. Link is in the description for those who prefer to read, or want to contact the author. Chapter 16. Putting All Might on a pedestal like he's a god. But that's your one mistake. He's not a god. All Might will die. He's mortal, human. You're blinded by All Might's light. You raging fanatic. The records of Stain's arrest were all over Japan by sunrise. Wanderer's words filled everyone's ears. But not everyone could accept that. Civilians found it hard to imagine a world without All Might, but they soon realized the harsh reality that All Might was mortal and wouldn't be around forever. Heroes realized that they've grown complacent, relying on one man to save Japan when the country was filled with heroes like themselves. Wanderer's words sparked a fire in them. All Might won't be around forever, they needed to pull their own weight. Criminals and villains alike simply heard that All Might was mortal and wouldn't be around forever. The reckless ones took that as a challenge to do something. The smart ones bid their time. But one fact remained the same. Japan was changing, whether it was good or bad, that was uncertain. Wanderer flew through the sky. It was currently 12 in the afternoon. He had left the hospital hours ago, after a talk with the chief of police and making sure that Deku, Ingenium and Shoto were alright in delivering a chop on the head to Tenya Iida. He didn't see the need to stick around. Burnin and Kriti were already out and about on patrol. He was currently flying back to his agency. His phone rang. Sighing, he took it out and placed it against his ear. Hello. Quote. Quite the speech, brat. Grand spoke through the speaker. Not really a speech, just stating facts. Wanderer answered. Well, what you said is most likely gonna motivate some of the rats. Grand sighed. I'll handle that, or better yet, it'll be a kick in the ass for other heroes to take more initiative. Wanderer scoffed. Huh. Exactly, it's what heroes these days need. Grand Torino barked out. Well, listen, you also have a guest heading to your agency. Wanderer raised an eyebrow. A guest? Quote. Nighteye, he's not happy with what you said about Toshinori. The puppet rolled his eyes. He already pegged the former sidekick as a All Might worshipper. I'll deal with him. I know you will, just know that his heart is in the right place. He's just, Grand trailed off. Blind. Wanderer narrowed his eyes. Grand Torino sighed. He had a successor already in mind for One for All. He wasn't happy about Toshinori's choice. That wasn't his choice, Wanderer added. What was the candidate like? Quote. Well, from what Nighteye told me when he tried to convince me that he found the perfect candidate, I was reminded of Toshinori if he was younger. Quote. So he's tried to make another All Might. Wanderer sighed in disappointment. Basically, I didn't agree and Nighteye cut communications with me until today, telling me that you stirred the pot and ruined All Might's image. Imbecile, I'll deal with him. Wanderer scowled as he arrived at his building. This time, he floated to the main entrance and went in through the doors. Standing right by the receptionist was a tall and lanky man. Nighteye. Wanderer greeted, unaffected by the glare the former sidekick was giving him. Do you have any idea what you've done? Nighteye spoke in an even tone. Let's take this to my office. Wanderer cut in and went straight for the elevator. The man scowled but followed. When they reached the office floor, the two heroes stepped out and walked to Wanderer's office, Faruzan noticed and Wanderer gave her a nod as the two heroes entered. Once the doors closed, Nighteye finally spoke. "You ruined his image," he accused Wanderer. "And what image did I ruin?" the puppet asked as he walked to his desk and sat on his chair. "All Might's image is the symbol of peace. People are starting to doubt him," Nighteye argued. Wanderer rolled his eyes. "Listen to yourself, you're defending him because you're also blind to his light." Nighteye glared. "Japan needs a symbol, someone to rely on, someone to help them feel safe." The puppet raised an eyebrow. "Like your near-identical copy that you wanted to be the inheritor of One for All." Quote. Nighteye glared harder. "Mirio is the perfect candidate, All Might should have at least met him before going for a quirkless child." Wanderer blinked. "Wow. Just, wow." Wanderer couldn't believe the man's entitlement. "So, it's because he picked a quirkless boy, instead of your protege?" Wanderer asked, wanting to confirm it. "Mirio already has experience using his quirk and hero work," Nighteye said. Wanderer glared. Quote. "You're delusional." Nighteye glared right back. "You want so badly for your light to stay, not even realizing that it's damaging you. All Might's idea for the symbol of peace is flawed, he's just a man, he won't live forever." Wanderer hated repeating himself, but people don't see the reality. "That's why we must have someone take his place, to keep the peace that he created," Nighteye argued. "That peace is tied to All Might. All you're doing is making a carbon copy to take his place." Wanderer growled. "How dare you?" Question mark. Nighteye slammed his hands against the desk. "What's his hair color?" Quote. "He's blonde. Eye color." "What does this have to do with?" "Answer my question." Quote. "Blue." "Does he smile and make jokes?" Quote. Nighteye remained silent. "There you go." Wanderer crossed his arms. "You're grooming your student to become your former partner." Nighteye clenched his fists and got up. "That boy isn't worthy of the quirk." "And why do you believe that?" the puppet asked. "He's an inexperienced boy without a quirk of his own," Nighteye answered with a scowl. Wanderer stared at the former sidekick with a blank stare. Quote. "And what was Toshinori Yagi before he became All Might?" Quote. That question made Nighteye freeze. Wanderer let out a bitter chuckle. "Your problem isn't who Yagi chose, it's the fact that he didn't choose your perfect candidate. That you'll lose your precious light and be plunged in darkness, not wanting to look at another kind of light." Nighteye turned and stormed out of his office. Wanderer sighed and leaned back. "Why do I bother with these people?" Quote. Faruzan walked in and noticed his look of annoyance. Quote. "Do I even want to know?" Quote. "Unless you want to hear how Nighteye is a stubborn child." Quote. "Then I don't want to know." In the teacher's lounge of UA, Toshinori Yagi was reading the latest news on his phone. Wanderer's words really struck, even if he had heard them before. "I messed up," Toshinori muttered. Finally admitting it. Shota Aizawa asked as he was walking by. Quote. "I was told that my idea for a symbol was dumb. I didn't believe them," Toshinori sighed. "And now that I'm close to retirement, I can't help but wonder if they were correct in the first place." Not entirely true. From Aizawa's scarf, Nezu popped out. Quote. "How long were you there?" Aizawa asked, looking at the principal. "Your idea for a symbol is not a bad one, All Might." Nezu started, ignoring Aizawa. "But the way you went about it was the wrong way." Toshinori blinked. "How should I have done it?" He asked Nezu. You tied the symbol to yourself. Take UA for example, it's the best hero school in the world. Nezu got out of Aizawa's scarf. A symbol of hero education. When people think of the best hero school, our school comes to mind. Nezu continued. Your name will be in the history books as the symbol of peace, but only for the era you lived in. Toshinori thought about it. Nezu had a point. He thought of the Statue of Liberty. It was an ever-present symbol of democracy and freedom, a symbol that would stand as long as there were people around to admire and even maintain. But he would fade. He would die, and that symbol would die with him. He would become an idea, not being able to do anything to help directly. What you can do is build your legacy, build something to leave behind when you're gone. Nezu smiled at him. All Might paused. He already had someone, young Midoriya. Ever since the USJ, he's been taking lessons to be a better teacher. Izuku Midoriya was his legacy, not just him, but the students here. Being a teacher is a thankless job sometimes. Aizawa added his own thoughts. You impart your experience for students to learn, give them advice, guide them, but when they leave, it's up to them to make their mark on the world. People won't even know it was you who taught them sometimes, but knowing that you had a part in making them who they are, that's worth it. Wisely said. Nezu piped up. Toshinori took those words in, as did Nahida's analogy about the garden. He had ignored young Midoriya. No, he has ignored all his students long enough. Toshinori vowed to be a better teacher. That started in cutting his patrol time. Something he should have done after the USJ, but he didn't. His thoughts went to Wanderer and how he was protecting Japan. Thank you. Toshinori smiled at his boss and coworker and got up. He did have teaching lessons to get to. Enji Todoroki sat in his office, staring into the distance. Ever since that battle with Wanderer, his view of the world has been messed up. It was hard to think, so he went on autopilot. His sidekicks noticed, his kids had noticed. And now, Wanderer took down the hero killer, and even made the crazed killer lose his conviction. Wanderer stripped Stain's actions down and judged him, using his victims to show that Stain was nothing but a madman that spouted nonsense. That made Enji think about his own goals. His goals, why did he want to be the best? Enji's mind flashed back to that fateful day, when his father died saving someone. He didn't want that to happen again. He wanted to become a hero, the best hero to avoid any incidents like that. Time passed and All Might came into the scene and Enji felt like he wasn't doing enough. He felt inadequate, inferior. Enji looked down at his desk. His quirk was the ability to create and control his flames. Nothing special, he carved it into the quirk he uses today. To have the power, the precision, he worked hard to get to the number 2 spot, just like the hero name he gave himself. But then he lost it to Wanderer, a hero with a wind quirk, simple like his own. The Wanderer's words filled his head. He gave up. Enji clenched his fists. He didn't give up. He shifted his focus. His actions weren't of a hero, but of a villain. The family he had. Toya was dead. Natsuo hated him. Shoto despised him. Fuyumi, she was still sticking by him, seeing the best in him, just like her mother. Rei, the woman who agreed to the quirk marriage, the woman he put in a mental hospital because she injured his masterpiece. Masterpiece. He really had given up. Ever since Shoto was born, Enji pushed him hard to master his quirk, only for Shoto to reject him and stop using his flames. Was it really a rebellious phase, or was it true resentment and hatred? When Shoto first arrived at the agency for his internship, his words stuck to Enji's mind. I came here because of your knowledge on how you use your fire, nothing more. The tone Shoto used was a cold one. Enji opened his palm and it burst into flames. He stared into the fire in his hand and then at the double doors. Shoto had just come back from the hospital after his fight with the hero killer and was currently training with one of his sidekicks. Enji got up. I became a hero to be the best, he muttered to himself. He had forgotten why he wanted to be the best. Break himself and rebuild. He's done the first part already, and he has the other half to do. Maybe he could even fly. Propulsion is possible, just need to learn how to make it work and train with it. But first, he took his phone out and dialed a number. Enji needed to set things right. He knows he won't be forgiven, but at least he's done something. Tamura Shigaraki tossed the newspaper away in anger. That fucking cheater. Using charisma to take away our rep. The villain raged. Kurogiri watched as Tamura raged. Tamura Shigaraki, please calm yourself. How can I? Exclamation mark. Tamura demanded. No one is talking about us. We're an afterthought. Our Nomus didn't do anything to gain any attention. Everyone is focused on that hero killer. Quote. Then we must find a way to gain their attention. All for One spoke up from the speaker of the screen. Tamura turned to the TV. Master. Quote. Do not be discouraged, Tamura, we simply need to try again, but this time, you must be more picky with how you direct your anger. All for One informed Tamura. The villain scratched his neck. Our attack on the USJ didn't go well. Hosu was a bust. I threw my minions at the enemy instead of using an actual strategy. I need to get other players, instead of the NPC I had at the USJ. Tamura muttered. Very good, Tamura. All for One praised. Satisfaction can be heard in his tone of voice. And how will you do that? Quote. I need to think. Tamura walked out of the bar and into his room. In his private room, All for One sighed. The hero killer would have been a great boon to their cause. Heck, even his ideals could be used to their advantage. But the Wanderer stripped that bare and showed that it was simply random killings and that Stain had no real reason for his actions but mindless murders. Tamura would need to find his own way to sway villains to his aid. All for One needed to be patient. Well, he's been patient for this long, a little longer wouldn't hurt. Momo was waiting for her train to arrive so she could return home. You got everything? Vernon asked as she walked up to Momo with a smile. Momo returned the smile. Yes, thank you for everything. Ah, don't mention it, just remember to use what you learnt in the agency at school. Vernon patted Momo on the back. I will. Momo nodded. She heard the people around them go silent. She looked around confused until she saw a wanderer walking over. "Yes, sir." Momo gasped. "I came to see you off. I apologize for the lateness, I was dealing with a nearby dispute." Wanderer crossed his arms. Momo shook her head. "It's all right, sir, I was just surprised that you came here," she said. "Why wouldn't I?" Momo flushed as she didn't have an answer to that. "Ha. She's just intimidated by you, boss." Vernon laughed. Wanderer gave her a side eye before looking at Momo. "Kriti, remember what I taught you." The heiress stood straighter. "Don't hesitate in battle, think quickly and be confident." Wanderer nodded as the train arrived. "Good luck, Kriti." Wanderer turned and walked away with Vernon giving a two-finger salute before following the hero. Momo smiled as she entered the train. This week was interesting and she felt like she learned a lot from the Wind Hero. She couldn't wait to go back to Ua. A week later, Tensei Iida was being wheeled by Shota Aizawa down the street to a destination that he didn't know yet. Su no tip? Tensei asked with a grin. No, Shota sighed as he kept pushing Tensei. Come on, you come to my place just after I get back from the hospital, apologize to me and my parents, then whisk me away. You gotta give me something. The underground hero's face morphed into a guilty look. I didn't stop your brother from going on with his revenge crusade. He muttered. Tensei sighed. I already gave him a talking to, and a noogie. Tenya knew to fear the noogie. Still, it could have been avoided if I was just more hands-on. Did Wanderer chew you out? Tensei smirked. Shota's twisted into one of annoyance. Tensei laughed as he knew he had Shota. I had an idea that he was the reason, Tensei teased as Shota shook his head. They finally made it to their destination. Hey, it's the sports bar we used to go to. Tensei recognized the place, the door opened and Present Mike poked his head out. Tensei. My man. The voice hero grinned as he walked up to the duo, Tensei fist bumping Mike with a grin. What's going on? Shota just grabbed me and brought me here. Tensei looked at his two friends. Well, come inside and see. Mike grinned wider and then opened the door to the bar. Surprise. Tensei blinked as he saw all his pro-hero friends and sidekicks, wearing civilian clothing, occupying the bar. Woe for me. Tensei looked at Mike. Well, Tensei turned his head and saw Midnight walking up to him with a friendly smile. Technically it was for something else. She explained. Celebrating the takedown of the hero killer. But Fat Gum grinned from his table while eating some sushi. He didn't want to be celebrated for doing his job, so he suggested this. The BMI hero pointed at the nearby wall where Wanderer was leaning against the wall, wearing a blue jacket, black jeans and his normal hat on. Wanderer. Tensei gave the biggest smile he could muster. This was your idea. Quote. The puppet looked at Tensei. Quote. I simply suggested it. And we went with it. Mike slapped Tensei on the back. Welcome to your retirement party. And Wanderer's paying the bill. Quote. What? Exclamation mark. Wanderer shouted but everyone cheered. Tensei sipped on his drink as he watched his friends and sidekicks mingle and talk. It made him happy to see this. He didn't think he would have a retirement party so soon. This was something he needed after his incident. Wanderer walked over and put his hat on the bar. Your brother is an idiot. The number 2 hero said. Ah, the ever-blunt Wanderer. I know, I told him so. He's still a kid though, he'll learn, thank you. Tensei smiled. Not just for this, but for saving my brother. Wanderer rolled his eyes. Don't mention it. He crossed his arms. Quote. Not drinking. Tensei noticed. Not in the mood. Wanderer responded. It was Tensei's turn to roll his eyes. Do you ever wind down? Remember when we chased that big hamster ball down in Kyoto? Quote. Wanderer smirked. I believe I remember you slipping and crashing into that fish truck and smelling like tuna for a week. Tensei glared. Hey. We agreed to never speak of that part. I don't recall making such a deal. Wanderer chuckled. Damn you, Wanderer. Tensei sighed as he took his glass and sipped his drink. Quote. Fujin. Tensei paused and looked at Wanderer wide-eyed. Huh. Quote. Don't tell anyone. Wanderer Fujin walked away. Tensei stared in shock before his lip curled into a genuine smile. Quote. Thanks Fujin, he muttered. Chapter 17. I'm honestly thinking about your thought process that compelled you all to do something so stupid. Wanderer deadpanned at a group of thugs with plastic Wanderer masks, robbing an armored vehicle transporting money. Shit. A random thug tried to run but Wanderer rushed forward and beat the thugs down in record time. As soon as he was done, Wanderer sighed. It's been a month since the stain incident and things have gotten quiet. Most would think that it was a good thing but it unnerved him. Taking off into the air, Wanderer rocketed back to his agency. He had cases to solve, but not the ones that the HSPC is aware of. Considering said commission is one of the cases he's been investigating. Arriving at his agency, he entered through the window and took out a remote. He pressed a button and the shutters went down, blocking the windows. Turning on the lights, he took out a pen drive and plugged it into his computer. Minami was an amazing hacker and programmer, he admitted that much. She was able to keep their servers as secure as the Pentagon. Why? Well, for a while he's been suspicious about a few things. After some digging into the underworld, he found evidence. With the matter of the League of Villains and All for One, he would let All Might handle that. His first case was the Meta Liberation Army, an army that's said to be disbanded, but after asking Minami to do some digging, there was evidence that they were around and that they were coiled around Hero Society like a parasite. Wanderer has been investigating, nothing noteworthy, just some bribes and interrogation. There were heroes who were in the MLA. He didn't know who he could trust. None of the top 10 were part of it. He did his research. His biggest lead was Detranet, the company that he knew was a front for the army. His time as a harbinger helped as he himself worked on building an army from within. He knew what to look for, but he had to be careful. One slip and the army goes dark and he would lose them. Then there was the HPSC themselves. He's been suspecting them since day one. Wanderer dug deep to find their secrets, one being the former pro-hero Lady Nagant. Put into Tartarus for killing the former president of the HPSC. No wonder Nezu told him not to trust them, they were manipulators. Wanderer would have no part in that. But the issue was, this wasn't a parasite in the system, it was the system. He didn't know who made these decisions, either it was one person or a group, but he couldn't go after them, yet. He needed more time and more evidence. Wanderer finished typing on his keyboard and took out the pen drive, putting it in a secure and hidden safe under his desk. Wanderer sat down and pressed a button on his remote, lifting the blinds. The puppet glared. Corruption was inevitable, but he wasn't the sixth harbinger for being nice. He knew how these organizations think. He'll catch them and take them down. That was his vow as a hero. Fuyumi liked surprises, but this, she wasn't sure. Her dad had asked her to call Natsuo to come over for something important, so when she heard someone knocking on the door, she rushed to open it, but it wasn't Natsuo. "Mom," she whispered as Rei Todoroki was standing by the door with a suitcase. The older woman smiled at Fuyumi and pulled her into a hug. "It's so good to see you," she whispered to her daughter. Why was she here? Dad had her in the hospital, he got her out. Not that she was ungrateful, but why? Rei, Enji Todoroki made his presence known as he walked up to the two. Enji. Rei gave a small tired smile. You shaved. The large man snorted and walked back inside. I will fetch Shoto. He grumbled. Rei frowned. He's different. Fuyumi nodded. Ever since his fight with the Wanderer, he's been reserved and distant. Mom! Exclamation mark. The two women turned and saw Natsuo looking at her in shock. Hello Natsuo. Rei smiled softly. Fuyumi didn't have a good feeling about this. The Todoroki family were eating in silence. The dish was soba, Shoto's favorite. Do you prefer cold soba, Shoto? Rei asked her youngest son, breaking the silence. Shoto nodded as he took another bite. The atmosphere was tense. Natsuo was trying to remain civil, but he glared at their father, who didn't even look angry, he looked blank. "How's school?" Rei asked Shoto. "Fine, we're going to have our finals soon," Shoto responded. "I've been studying." Silence filled the air again. Natsuo put his bowl down. "Okay, shitty old man, why are we here?" He glared at Enji. "Natsuo," Rei frowned. "Please. Why are you defending him?" Question mark. Natsuo demanded. Fuyumi clenched her chopsticks. "Natsuo," she spoke, her tone was icy. The middle child looked at her and froze when she was giving him a cold and stern look. One that promised pain if he misbehaved. "Our father, yes," she cut in before Natsuo tried to interrupt. "Our father," she emphasized her words. "Asked me to call you here, our mother is here, be civil before I show you what ice can do to male genitalia." She's been spending too much time with Fujin. Natsuo squeaked in fear. Rei and Enji looked at their daughter in shock. Shoto blinked in surprise. Fuyumi's expression shifted to a calm smile. "Now, I believe our father has something to speak to us about." Quote. Enji shook himself out of his shock. "Yes, I know that I've been a terrible father," Enji started speaking, looking at Natsuo, whose face twisted into a hateful glare, and then at Shoto, who turned away. Quote. "When I was a boy, my father died in a fire, trying to save a girl." Enji started. Rei's eyes went wide, she had never heard of this before. Natsuo blinked, wondering what this had to do with anything. Shoto looked at his father in contemplation. Fuyumi tilted her head. Quote. "I watched it firsthand. That day, I didn't want anything like that to happen again. It was one of the main reasons I wanted to become a pro-hero." Enji looked down at his cup. "I wanted to be the strongest, to show that nothing like that will happen again, but as time passed, it became a matter of pride. I wanted to be the number one, it became an obsession, one that turned me into the man in front of you." "Enji, please Rei," Enji cut in. "Let me finish." Rei put her head down. Quote. "A month ago, I had a revelation, I gave up." Enji closed his eyes, thinking of Wanderer's words. "I gave up on myself, I put all of my ambitions into my sons, Tuya and Shoto." Natsuo clenched his fists. "My obsession, my pride, cost me one of my sons, now it is costing me this family." Enji took a deep breath. "I then thought, what will happen if I reach the number one spot? What will I have besides a position and a title?" Quote. Enji looked at his family. "I am not asking for forgiveness, my actions are inexcusable," Enji admitted. "I will do everything I can to atone for my sins, starting with bringing Rei here." Rei gave him a sad look. Natsuo gripped his chopsticks. Enji sighed. "I will be leaving this house, I have one being built for myself, it's almost complete, I will be in the office most of the day until then." Fuyumi looked shocked, her father was going this far. "For what?" Quote. "Dad," everyone looked at her. "I'm glad that you acknowledged what you've done, and I do forgive you." "Sis. Natsuo spoke up. But Fuyumi cut him off again. "I know what he's done. What he's done to Shoto. To us. To Tuya." Fuyumi slammed her fist on the table. "You don't think I've felt it? The anger. The resentment. Exclamation mark. I'm the oldest sibling. You think Tuya was free of guilt? He tried to kill Shoto when he was a baby." Quote. Shoto's eyes went wide as he heard this. You never told me this, the boy muttered, his hands shaking. That's because Dad tried to stop Tuya from hurting Shoto and himself. Because his quirk was hurting him. His envy, not Dad's obsession. His own quirk killed him. Touya pushed himself too far. You're blaming Dad because you can't accept that our whole family is broken, and I soon realized that I'm the only one who's been trying to fix it. Shoto's burn isn't because of Dad. It was Mom. But she's already suffered for her choice. Shoto refused to use his fire because he believed it was Dad's quirk, not his own. I know you hate him, Natsuo, but we're all at fault for this broken family, you imbecile. Fuyumi shouted as tears ran down her cheeks. The table went quiet after Fuyumi finished her rant. Natsuo looked down in guilt. Rei was tearing up. Shoto was staring at his sister wide-eyed, and Enji, he was looking at his daughter with a sad look in his eyes. Our family is broken, but it's a family I still love. Fuyumi got up and walked out. Did Tuya? Shoto asked quietly. Yes. Rei nodded as tears streamed down her cheeks. Natsuo looked at his father, who looked down in shame. I'm sorry, Natsuo said quietly. Enji looked at his son. I can't forgive you. I don't expect you to. Enji responded. Natsuo clenched his fists. But, if you're serious about this atonement, I'll consider it. Enji looked shocked but nodded. Rei got up. I'll check on her. Rei left the dining room. Fuyumi walked outside and took her phone out. She dialed his number and waited. On the second ring, the line picked up. Hello. Fujin. Fuyumi whispered. Fuyumi. Did something happen? Fujin asked. Dad brought Mom home. We were having dinner and we were talking. Natsuo started saying stuff and I just snapped. Fuyumi whimpered. I've been working so hard to make things work and now I don't know how to move forward. Fuyumi explained what her father said, wanting his advice. Your father is trying to atone. Fujin said. He believes that he needs to spend time away, to see the world in this new perspective. Give it time, do not force it. What you said was necessary. Give them the harsh truth rather than silence. You can rebuild the bridge now, but slowly. You can ask for help from your family once they see you trying once more. Fuyumi listened and sniffed. Thank you, Fujin. I'm sorry that I'm putting this on you, she apologized. Don't worry about it. I told you that you could call me if you needed someone to talk to. Fujin responded. Fuyumi sniffed again. Right, I gotta go, I kinda ran off. She muttered. After saying her farewell, she hung up. Turning around, she gasped as she saw her mom standing there, with a pleasant smile on her face. Mom. What's wrong? Why are you smiling like that? Fuyumi asked as she noticed her mother's smile. Oh, I'm simply wondering how long you've had a boyfriend for. Rei asked as she kept her smile. Fuyumi froze for a second before blushing. I don't have a boyfriend. I was just talking to a friend. That blush tells me otherwise. Rei giggled. He must have been the one to spark your bolder side. Fuyumi raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Rei let out a small sigh. You're a kind woman, you get that from me, but you were more reserved during your visits, but now, you've shown a side I've never seen before, neither has your father or brothers by the looks of it. Rei explained. Fuyumi blinked and realized something. I called my brother an imbecile. I never did that before. She covered her face and Ray just patted her daughter's back, already having an idea on who caught her daughter's eye. They had one thing in common, they both had an interest in the number 2 heroes of their time. Wanderer stared at his phone. Why did he invest so much time in these affairs? He wasn't part of their squabble and yet he helped. Mostly it was because the whole situation reminded him of himself. Endeavor's desires for the perfect child. His mother wishing for the perfect vessel. Endeavor disregarding his eldest for Shoto who had the perfect quirk. His mother when she abandoned him and created the Shogun puppet. Endeavor is he obsessed to become number 1, himself is he obsessed with becoming a god. Shoto's resentment towards his father, his own resentment towards his mother. He saw so many parallels he felt sick. Closing his eyes, he took his tea and sipped it. Faruzan was with Himiko, forcing her to study for the finals that would be coming up soon. He swore he could hear Himiko's cries from here. Chapter 18. Wanderer was going to leave All for One to All Might, but now he was involved. During the US summer camp, the League of Villains invaded. How? He became sure that there was a spy and made a note to investigate. In the aftermath, Ragdoll, Himiko and Bakugo were kidnapped. Current theories on the reasoning: for Ragdoll, it was obvious, her quirk, it was useful for All for One. For Himiko, it was because of her past, probably an attempt to turn her to villainy. As for Bakugo, it's probably for the same reason, but they thought he would make a good villain because of his behavior at the sports festival, before he curbed his attitude. When Faruzan found out about Himiko's kidnapping, she was a mess, demanding that the heroes do everything in their power to get her daughter back. Wanderer was currently walking down the hallway to the meeting room with Faruzan walking next to him, fiddling with a small pyramid device. Quote, "You don't need to be here." Wanderer sighed. "My daughter is in the clutches of those villains. I have to be here." Faruzan snapped at him. Wanderer stopped and turned to her. "Your emotions are clouding your judgment, you're only gonna be a liability," he told her. Faruzaj scowled before tearing up. I can't lose her," she exclaimed, now crying. "She's my daughter. I raised her after those monsters abused her. I can't just sit back and do nothing." Quote. Wanderer sighed and patted her head. "I will get her back, I promise." Wanderer started walking again. Faruzan smiled and hugged him from behind. "Get her back, Fujin." Wanderer didn't react right away, but he did sigh. After she let go, he made his way to the meeting room with Faruzan watching him leave. He never imagined a life like this, where he was a respected hero, one of the top ranking. Fujin opened the doors and walked in. The room was full of heroes, some from the top 10, including All Might, Endeavor and Best Jeanist. "Boss." Vernon ran up to him. "Can you believe this large operation?" Exclamation mark. She grinned. "I can see the reason, now calm down." Wanderer ordered and Vernon stopped and nodded. As the higher-ups in the commission gave the statements, he couldn't help but wonder how Himiko and Bakugo were doing at the Love HQ. "Join us, society already." "I'm gonna stop you right there, handjob." Himiko interrupted Shigaraki. Bakugo snorted and smirked. Dabi smirked as well. Himiko looked at the remaining members. The one known as Shigaraki, a burnt man, the teleporter and a woman with a large support item, that's it. Just 4 members. "I'm happy with my life right now, I have a loving mom who's probably worried sick, and an uncle who can kick your ass." Himiko smirked. "You're obviously desperate for members, I mean, look at you and you're in desperate need of a makeover. Himiko huffed. We're villains, why would we need a makeover? Dabi rolled his eyes. I kinda agree, we could look better. Magna said. You specifically. Himiko looked at Shigaraki. You are in desperate need of a chapstick. Quote. Bakugo burst out laughing. And lotion. Are you allergic to it or something? Exclamation mark. Quote. Himiko joined in the laughter as Dabi and Magna were trying hard not to join. Tamura gritted his teeth. I'm trying to be accommodating here. Wait. If your quirk decays every time you touch something, does that mean that you tried masturbating and then it dusted off and that's why you're so cranky? Himiko asked as she suddenly stopped laughing. Bakugo paused and looked at her, the two looked at each other and then at Shigaraki, so did Dabi, Magna. Quote. Why the fuck are you looking at me like that? Exclamation mark. Shigaraki demanded as he noticed his teammates' looks. The two students burst out into hysterical laughter once more. Does your butler do it for you? Exclamation mark. Bakugo asked between laughs. He never asked such a thing. Kurogiri said in the straightest tone possible. Oh. Maybe they have a female Nomu. Himiko laughed harder at that. Shigaraki was shaking in anger, he needed patience. I'm going with Genus to the Nomu factory. Wanderer interrupted as everyone looked at him. Tsukauchi and the HPSC representatives were looking at the puppet. Are you sure? The detective asked him. Of course, you already have Endeavor and All Might at the scene, I'll provide support for Genus. Wanderer explained. The higher-ups looked at Wanderer but simply allowed it. The puppet sighed as he looked at Endeavor, he seemed calmer, not aggressive like before. Wanderer. The puppet looked down and saw Gran Torino. Old man. Wanderer greeted in return. Hey, thought you would be going in with Toshinori. Gran commented. The second team needs more raw power. Wanderer explained. We shouldn't underestimate them. Gran Torino nodded. We'll get her back, the old man told him. I know, Faruzan has been going crazy over this. The puppet sighed. The old man smirked. What mother wouldn't? Quote. Wanderer smirked as the two teams were ordered to move out. Wanderer had gone ahead of the second team and arrived at the Nomu factory. After some recon, Wanderer noticed them. Why were they here? The puppet took the time to fly towards the side of the warehouse and confront the sneaking students. What do you five think you're doing? Wanderer demanded, making said five freeze. Sir. Momo squeaked in fear as she realized her mentor was not pleased. I'm giving you 2 minutes to tell me why you're here. Wanderer glared. After some glances, they explained their intention of saving Bakugo and Himiko. Quote. And you couldn't let the professionals handle it? Wanderer asked. The responsible ones looked ashamed, but the redhead and Midoriya didn't look that sorry. Sir, with all due respect, we couldn't just do nothing, we failed at the camp, we had to do something. Kirishima explained. Do you have experience in rescue operations like these? Wanderer asked them. Kirishima froze and looked away. Do you have any idea on what to do when you're inevitably caught and used as leverage against us if you stay? Wanderer asked with a glare. Izuku flinched and shrunk away. Do any of you have provisional licenses? Quote. Shoto stared at Wanderer but he couldn't really refute the argument. Izuku knew that Wanderer was right, he was just like Aizawa. Using logic and facts but was more brutal with it. No answer, good, I don't expect one, You two are morons for thinking that you can actually contribute to this operation when we have some of the top 10 here. Wanderer shook his head. Go home. Yaoyorozu, Iida, take these 3 morons away from here before it gets messy. I will be speaking to your teacher about this. The students flinched at the glare of the number 2 hero. Sir, please, we can help. Izuku tried but flinched as the Wanderer glared directly at him. I will arrest you right here and now if you don't leave. Do not interfere. The puppet threatened. Iida put a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Come along. The group left without another word and the Wanderer shook his head. They weren't even thinking. This is why he hated working with kids. Flying back to the other heroes who had just arrived, Mount Lady grew and raised her leg up into the air and brought it down, destroying the front of the building. Genist and Wanderer worked in tandem. Wanderer shot forward and threw wind blades at the charging Nomu. As they staggered, Genist used his quirk to bind them. Great work, Mount Lady. Genist praised as Mount Lady grabbed 2 Nomu that were struggling. Ew, these things were human. Mount Lady stuck her tongue out in disgust. They were. Now the only real comfort we can give them is death, Wanderer sighed. There must be a way to avoid that. Gang Orca stepped in. Would you want to be one of these creatures? Wanderer asked. Gang Orca went silent. Ragdoll. Tiger rushed forward and found his teammate on a bed. He picked her up and she looked checked out, gaze distant, her mouth open, as if in a trance. What have they done to you? Tiger muttered in a sad tone. Wanderer stepped forward and examined her. Quote. Quirk theft. Wanderer growled and suddenly launched a wind blade into the dark factory which was repelled. Such quick reflexes, I expected nothing less from you, Wanderer. A man's voice called out from the darkness. A man wearing a suit stepped out. I apologize, her quirk was just too useful, I had to take it. Genist, acting just as quickly, used his quirk to control the fiber in the man's suit. Wait. What if that's a civilian? Mount Lady demanded. Open your eyes, rookie. If it was, he wouldn't have been able to repel my attack. Wanderer glared as the man chuckled. Indeed, it's good to see you again. After our last encounter, I've dreamed of taking your quirk. Such control over the wind, you command it as if you're its master. The man laughed, his voice muffled. Wanderer glared. Not gonna happen, All for One. All for One's body started to convulse as black electricity crackled around him. Wanderer's eyes went wide and he turned to the other heroes, sending out a strong gust of wind, sending the heroes away. Just then, a shockwave burst from All for One, destroying parts of the area. The students who were sneaking away stopped as an explosion occurred right where the factory was. Kirishima gritted his teeth. We gotta go back. Quote. No. Momo shot Kirishima a glare. We were ordered to go home. I will tranquilize you if I have to. Kirishima gritted his teeth. But, we can't just do nothing. Quote. What can we do? Iida added. We would only be a liability. Quote. They're right, Izuku spoke up. Kirishima looked at the boy. Wanderer told us to not interfere, we have to trust him. Kirishima scowled. We have to go, Shoto said, as the sound of fighting could be heard in the distance. I should have known you that your quirk would keep you safe. All for One spoke as he and Wanderer hovered over the crater. You're a madman, Wanderer scowled. I'm a man with ambition. All for One retorted and descended to the ground. Wanderer stayed hovering. Wanderer averted his gaze to Genist and the rest of the team. All for One took that chance to reach into his pocket and pressed a button on a remote. Wanderer, Genist got up and looked disheveled. Thank you. The other heroes got up slowly. Prioritize rescue, any civilians in the area, I'll handle the villain. Wanderer ordered as he looked back at All for One. Genist wanted to argue but nodded and the other heroes scattered to help those trapped in the rubble. Just as the puppet was about to attack, the League of Villains appeared in front of the madman along with Bakugo and Himiko. That was disgusting. Himiko wiped her mouth of the gray sludge, she turned and gasped. Uncle Juan. Quote. Bakugo coughed and looked up, he looked between the Wanderer and All for One. Apologies for the warp, young Himiko, the quirk I used is still new, useful but a rather unpleasant experience. All for One apologized. Wanderer scowled, he couldn't just grab the two and fly away, he should have kept one of the other heroes here, slight oversight but he'll manage. Master. Shigaraki muttered as he looked at All for One. Do not fret, my apprentice, you must leave before more heroes arrive, I shall stall them. Run. Wanderer shouted at the two students and shot towards All for One, slamming his fist into the man's stomach, but was blasted away by a shockwave. Ah, there you are. All for One smirked as All Might came down from the sky and rammed his fists down, only for All for One to catch them. Predictable as always. All for One taunted with a smirk. I'll have you return my students. All Might shouted as he pushed back and landed on the ground. Himiko dodged Magna's attacks and kicked the woman away. Bakugo. Come on. Himiko rushed towards the explosive boy and pushed Shigaraki down. Let's go. Quote. Don't tell me what to do. Bakugo growled but ran away from the villains. Shigaraki tried to give chase but Wanderer swooped in and grabbed the two by their shirts. Uncle Juan. Himiko cheered. Hang on. Wanderer flew towards the town square. Once he arrived, he put the kids down. Stay put until the police come to get you. With that, the puppet shot into the sky towards the battle. Bakugo. Himiko. The two students turned to see their friends running up to them. Guys. Why are you dressed up? Himiko looked confused. Wanderer flew back just in time to see Shigaraki going through one of Kurogiri's portals. He shot towards it and was about to reach, but something rammed into him, sending him crashing into a wall. Wanderer grunted as he got out of the wall and looked at what rammed into him. It was a Nomu, but this one was different. It was jet black, large body with wings and what looked to be organic turbines on its back, and its face was covered by a hood. I prepared for you specifically, Wanderer. Meet the first ever high-end Nomu, but you can call him Hood. All for One had a huge grin on his face. Wanderer. Hood groaned out. What have you done? All Might looked horrified as he looked at the monster. Improved on the first Nomu, the base is exactly what you expect, regeneration, enhanced strength and now, much more. The villain cackled. Wanderer glared at Hood. This one was strong. He could tell, he needed to be careful. All Might, can you take on your nemesis? The puppet asked All Might. Can you take on that freak of nature? All Might retorted as he flexed. This thing isn't a freak of nature, it's an abomination. Wanderer scowled. Wanderer. Hood roared and rocketed towards the puppet. Wanderer met the beast head on. Now, where were we? All for One turned to face the number one hero. Fuyumi was in her room reading, thinking about how things have been quieter and calmer since her father left. Her thoughts were interrupted by Natsuo barging into her room. Sis. Come to the living room. He demanded. Natsuo. Knock first. Fuyumi snapped. Come on. Your boyfriend is fighting on TV. Quote. Fujin isn't my boyfriend. Fuyumi went red at that. Her brother didn't argue as he grabbed her wrist and dragged her out of bed. When she pulled away, she followed him to the living room where their mother was staring at the TV. Fuyumi looked at the TV and gasped as live footage was being shown of All Might fighting a villain who was able to push him back, but what had her worried was the fact that Fujin was fighting against a monstrosity and seemed to be struggling. The woman gasped as the monster grabbed Fujin and tossed him into a building and shot after him. Fuyumi, he'll be okay. Rei tried to assure her daughter. Fuyumi sat next to her mother on the couch, not trusting her legs. The Wanderer was the number 2 hero, he would win, right? Natsuo and Rei noticed Fuyumi's worried look. They looked at the screen as Wanderer fought the monster. This thing wouldn't give him breathing room. Not that he could breathe, but he couldn't think and analyze the situation. And he lost his hat. This thing was relentless, keeping up with his quirk and narrow flying. The monster could extend its claws to reach him. He dodged and weaved. Every wind blade he launched, the Nomu healed from it instantly. Burnin or Endeavor would have been useful right now. As the puppet flew, he stopped dead in his tracks and watched as the Nomu fly right by him and hit a wall. It could think, but it was probably hard to do so with the amount of quirks in his body. He turned to see All for One and a shrunken All Might. Wanderer's eyes went wide and noticed the news chopper. This was being broadcasted. Damn it. Wanderer was about to fly towards the weakened hero, but he dodged Hood's tackle. Stay down. Wanderer shouted and launched more wind blades. There was no fire he could draw from. Wanderer knew his own weaknesses. His wind could only do so much, hence he had Burnin as a sidekick, to help cover his weakness, but she was with the other team at the bar. He was careless. Hood raced towards him. Wanderer shot upwards and then shot down, sending the Nomu crashing into the ground. Taking this moment, he shot towards All for One, who was ready to launch a shockwave at All Might. He also saw a woman buried in the rubble. Damn it. Flying faster, he tackled All for One, the villain growled. Hood isn't enough, very well. Aiming his arm, All for One shot Wanderer with a shockwave point blank. Wanderer. All Might shouted as the puppet was sent flying. Annoying, vermin. Wanderer reoriented himself. All for One was about to retort when he let out a shockwave to dispel a fire blast from Endeavor. What's with that weak body? The number 3 hero shouted at All Might. Wanderer rolled his eyes and was about to attack, but he let out a gasp as he felt something pierce his back. People who were watching gasped in horror as the Nomu was now behind Wanderer, impaling him from behind. At the Todoroki household, Fuyumi let out a horrified cry, covering her mouth as she watched Wanderer get impaled. On the streets where the students were, Momo let out a panicked cry as her mentor got impaled. Himiko screamed as her uncle was stabbed. Izuku and Bakugo watched in shock as they saw the event. In the agency, Faruzan was speechless and Nahida watched with wide eyes as Fujin was impaled by the beast. All Might watched in horror as the Nomu impaled his friend. Wanderer looked down and gritted his teeth. Building up as much anemo energy he could, his body let out a shockwave, sending the Nomu flying away. Wanderer grunted as he pulled his shirt over the wound so as to not show anything. More importantly, to hide that he wasn't bleeding. Ha ha ha. Resilient aren't you? Exclamation mark. All for One laughed as Wanderer stayed hovering. It'll take more than that to stop me. Wanderer shouted, but as he was about to fly, he stumbled, his eyesight started getting blurry. It looks like it was more than enough. All for One smirked as he noticed how the puppet stumbled. Hood, finish him. He was planning on stealing the hero's quirk, but he had more pressing matters to deal with. All Might shook off his shock and summoned what remained of the embers of his quirk and charged at All for One. Hood came rushing in, this time, grabbing Wanderer and taking him into the sky. Edgeshot looked at Endeavor. "Can you fly?" Exclamation mark. Quote. Endeavor wanted to say no but he paused. He could, if he used his flames. "We shall see." Endeavor shot fire out of his feet and rocketed into the sky with Edgeshot following, planning on aiding the number 2 hero. Wanderer didn't understand why his body was growing more tired. He growled and tried to summon more wind but how powers flickered. "No, not now." Wanderer growled. "Kill, kill." Hood's hood came off, showing the face, a grotesque-looking one with the brain exposed as it roared. Just then a torrent of flames hit the back of Hood. Looking down, it saw Endeavor rocketing towards it just as the flame hero shot more flames at it. Hood let go of Wanderer and dodged the attack. "I got you." Edgeshot cried as he tried to grab Wanderer but he slipped through the ninja hero's fingers. "No." Quote. Wanderer started to fall to the earth, his eyes going dull and everything going black. Fujin wasn't sure about where he was but it looked like he was in a void. Quote. "I'm dead aren't I?" Fujin sighed. Not yet." A voice called out behind him. Fujin turned to see his creator. Quote. "I must be dead if I'm seeing you here, Beelzebub." Fujin sighed. "I'm not my sister's dear nephew." The look-alike smiled. Fujin's eyes narrowed. Quote. "Ball. Makoto, I suppose that you wouldn't know." Makoto commented. "How are you here and where exactly is here?" Fujin crossed his arms. "You are in your mind. As for how I am here, I unknowingly gave you some of the energy I left behind for her, hence you look more like me." Makoto smiled. Quote. "Well, I'm dead, so what next?" Fujin sighed. Makoto frowned. "You shouldn't accept it so easily." "What else can I do?" "I was stabbed, a part inside me probably failed." Fujin deduced. Makoto continued to frown. "And what of your friends?" Quote. Fujin remained silent. "What of the people you swore to protect?" Quote. Silence. Quote. "I know you care, that's your most defining trait." Makoto smiled. "You show that you don't but you care, more than anyone knows." It was true, he cared for the people he swore to protect. The friends he made. Years ago, he wouldn't give it a second thought but now it felt wrong to leave. "You're stronger than you realize Kuni-ah, it's Fujin isn't it?" Makoto giggled. "I don't wanna hear that mushy crap." Makoto still smiled but a tick mark appeared on her forehead. Just as blunt as A was, "Just remember, your ambition is stronger than you realize." With those final words, Makoto faded. What did she mean? A glow appeared, narrowing his eyes. Fujin saw that it was his Anemo vision, spinning. He tried to grab it but he couldn't reach it. Why Anemo? It was supposed to be connected to freedom. Was he free? He was free from metaphorical shackles when he embraced his past. And to fly, he felt very free. But there was something else. He had a duty. A responsibility he took when he became a hero. But that didn't stop him from being free. He was free to choose. He chooses to be a hero. He reached for the spinning vision. Anemo green. Anemo green. Electro purple. Anemo green. Electro purple. Fujin grabbed the vision with a determined glare. Nahida blinked. She felt odd. As if something was happening. On the screen, she saw thunder flash in the clouds above the battle between All Might and All for One. A smile bloomed. Jet burn. Endeavor roared as he let loose flash fire fist, jet burn. The Nomu dodged and swung its extended claws at the flame and ninja hero. Damn. I have to get to Wanderer. Edgeshot looked down and blinked as he saw something bright purple and light blue fly through forming clouds. Not strong enough. Hood shouted as he rocketed towards Endeavor, who dodged by letting out a blast of fire to propel himself to the side. I need a clear shot. Endeavor growled, but noticed something coming closer. Hood noticed as well. He turned and he was met with an electrified fist, sending the Nomu flying back. Fire now! Wanderer ordered as purple electricity surged around him. Endeavor's eyes were wide, but it turned serious as he realized the severity of the situation. He shot a torrent of fire at Wanderer, who used the wind to grab it and then condensed it into his hand. Hood shook his head to shake away the shock he received. Pulling itself off the building it crashed into, he flew out. Just as he was about to rocket back to the heroes, Wanderer was already in front of him, fist cocked back, covered in a sphere of wind, fire and electricity. Perish! Divine destruction! Wanderer screamed as he slammed his fist into the Nomu's face and incinerated the flesh around its face. At the same time, All Might delivered the finishing blow to his arch-nemesis. United States of Smash! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! All Might screamed as he pummeled All for One into the ground, creating a tornado. Around Japan, people saw the two top heroes delivering their ultimate moves simultaneously. The world watched in awe as All Might buffed up and raised his fist into the air in victory. People cheered as All Might showed that he won. Wanderer watched on, his hand on his chest. Endeavor stumbled as he landed. He watched as All Might showed the world that he won. Fuyumi slumped against the couch, her heart racing as she saw Fujin flying, but something seemed very wrong. Faruzan was in her car the moment the fight ended. She drove out of the garage and towards the battlefield with Nahida. After All for One was taken away, Wanderer was walking away, stumbling as he tried to fly. That burst took a lot out of him. Wanderer! All Might called out as he limped over. But the puppet couldn't hear him. He stumbled and fell to the ground. Wanderer! All Might cried out as medics rushed to check on the wind hero, but a voice called out. Move! Everyone looked up and saw Faruzan rushing over. Ma'am, you can't be, I'm his friend. I can help him, so move. Faruzan ordered. All Might grunted. Do as she says. He told the paramedics. Faruzan helped Wanderer into a gurney. She put her head on his chest and cursed as she couldn't examine him. I need to get him to a secure place, now. Quote. The paramedics followed her orders and got Wanderer into an ambulance. Nahida watched with a frown. She soon vanished from the car, looking to seek help from someone who knew Fujin's body better than himself. Chapter 19. Faruzan had Fujin taken to an empty hospital room, also assigning Burnin to keep anyone out, including the doctors. They wouldn't know where to start with Fujin, he wasn't human. Faruzan had taken his shirt off and her eyes widened at the scope of the damage, a gaping hole on the right side of his chest. She was thankful that his vision was on the left side. Checking on the vision, she was shocked by what she saw. The vision looked normal, except, one side was green with the Anemo symbol and the other was purple with the Electro symbol. A vision that held two elements. Was that even possible? That was probably how Fujin was able to fight the Nomu. She would have asked Nahida, but the girl vanished. Checking on the damages, she cursed. She wasn't that skilled and she didn't have the materials to fix him. Damn it, Faruzan teared up. Don't die on me, please, the woman whispered to her best friend. Faruzan won't let you see him. All Might asked Recovery Girl as he was patched up and recovering. The old woman shook her head. I tried to offer my services but his sidekick stopped me and then Faruzan stepped out to tell me that I couldn't do anything to help. Poor girl looked distraught. All Might frowned. I don't understand, he has that injury but Faruzan stopped anyone from looking at it. Gran Torino, out of costume and in bandages, spoke up. He has a secret, one that might alter the perception of the public if revealed. The old man muttered. All Might frowned deeper. Wanderer was his friend. Even though the two argued, Yagi always found Wanderer's advice to be invaluable, even if it was harsh. Maybe I'll give it a try. Nahida was pushing herself, but she had to. Fujin needed help and the only one to help had no memory of him. In the sanctuary of Surasthana, Nahida was meditating, reaching out. Opening her eyes, she found herself in a bare landscape, Torii gates in the distance. She was in the plain of Eutimia. Boer. Nahida turned and saw her, the Raiden Shogun. Beelzebub, please call me Nahida. Nahida bowed in respect. Then you may call me A. How did you get here? A asked with narrowed eyes. The two had never met in person, meeting this way must mean something has happened. Is there a catastrophe on the horizon? Quote. Nahida shook her head. I apologize for doing this but I need your help. Nahida pleaded. You once made a prototype, 500 years ago. A's eyes narrowed further. How do you know of the prototype? Quote. Nahida was thrown off by her response. You know of the prototype. Quote. Why? Didn't Fujin erase himself from Erminsel completely? From this day forward, Balladeer and Kabukimono shall cease to exist. Nahida gasped. He erased those two identities only. Answer me. A demanded as she got up from her meditative pose. Your prototype is in critical condition. Nahida exclaimed. He's been injured and we don't know how to fix him. Quote. A paused. Quote. He. Quote. Nahida paused as well. Quote. Do you know which prototype I'm talking about? Quote. A looked puzzled. Nahida wanted to groan. Okay, so she didn't know. A knew she made a prototype but that was it. I'm sorry but I need to show you something, I need to be quick. Nahida held out her hand and dendro energy spilled out. A's eyes widened as she was bombarded with memories. Memories of a puppet regaining his memories and his time in Sumeru. How similar he looked to Makoto. She took notice of the electro symbol on the back of his neck and the feather. It was a small symbol that represented her authority. He was her creation. Nahida pulled away as A looked down. I don't recognize him, but Ease. You cannot remember because he tampered with Erminsel, erasing his identity from Teyvat. Nahida explained. The traveler was with him when he did this, only the traveler has a complete recollection of his life. Since she is not of this world, she came to me, informing him of his actions. We found him and helped him regain his memories. Now he's in a critical state, please. Nahida begged. Help him. Quote. A listened and her eyes went wide as Nahida begged, tears streaming down her cheeks. Quote. Where is he? Quote. Nahida paused. Quote. That's complicated, he's not in Teyvat. A raised an eyebrow. All Might, his right arm in a cast and body covered in bandages, walked down the private wing of the hospital with Gran Torino and recovery girl in tow. They saw Faruzan talking to her daughter. Why won't you let anyone see him? Question mark. He's probably dead by now. Himiko screamed. It's complicated, Himiko. Faruzan screamed right back, tears streaming down her cheeks. Madam Faruzan. Yagi made his presence known. Faruzan looked at them. Great, just great. Faruzan covered her face with her hands. You're not letting anyone see him? Gran Torino asked with a frown. They can't help him, Faruzan shook her head. So he's dead? Exclamation mark. Himiko cried. No. It's complicated, Faruzan repeated. Then explain it. Recovery girl shouted. You're keeping him from getting any medical attention. Quote. You can't help him. No one can. Faruzan screamed as she fell to her knees. I can't help him. Yagi was in shock as Faruzan screamed. Himiko slowly knelt next to her mom and hugged her, Faruzan clinging to her daughter. Quote. Why can't anyone help him? Yagi asked. Faruzan looked at him, her unique eyes met his. Quote. Can you keep a secret? She whispered. Gran Torino snorted and Recovery Girl slapped his knee with her cane. Yes, I promise to keep this secret. All Might promised with a smile. Faruzan looked at Himiko. You too. Hinako blinked before she nodded. I promise, Mom. Faruzan got up. It's a good thing I told Bernan to go back to the agency, she muttered and opened the door, entering. Himiko followed after and gasped. Yagi entered and his eyes went wide as the sight of the wanderer laying on the bed. His shirt was off, there was no blood, no flesh, just a hole in his chest, showing mechanical parts. Recovery Girl gasped as well, finally understanding why no medical professional could help him. Quote. I always thought he was a robot but I didn't think it was true. Gran Torino grumbled. He's not a robot in a way, he's a puppet, Faruzan explained sadly. Quote. No wonder he's able to keep going for so long, Yagi stepped forward. It also explained why he never aged. So, Uncle Fujin isn't human, so what? Himiko held the puppet's hand and teared up. That means, he can be fixed, right? Himiko looked at her mom in desperation. Right. Exclamation mark. Quote. Faruzan looked away. Fujin, a fitting name for the puppet. Yagi thought as he looked at Faruzan. You can't fix him. Quote. No, it's too much for me to fix, I don't have the tools, or the knowledge. Faruzan admitted in shame. Then where is his creator? Recovery Girl asked. They must know how to fix him. Yeah. Where are they? In the agency. Himiko looked at her mom. I don't know who they are. Faruzan exclaimed, dread filling the room. Quote. He never told you. Gran Torino asked. No, he was secretive about that, Faruzan sniffed. Yagi looked at the puppet. To think, the number 2 hero being an artificial being, but he didn't see that. All those moments where Fujin interacted with people on TV, Himiko referring to him as her uncle. The impact he made during his time as a hero. That was human. Quote. We just need to wait for Nahida, Faruzan muttered. Quote. Wait the child. Yagi asked her. What's the pipsqueak gonna do? Himiko scowled. Have some respect. Faruzan snapped as Himiko recoiled. She's not a child, she looks like one but, she might know who Fujin's creator is. Faruzan explained. Himiko's eyes widened. So she must be bringing them. Quote. Who is she? Gran Torino asked. He met the child and she may look and act like a child but she wasn't one, that he knew for a fact. Faruzan bit her lip. Quote. Would you believe me if I told you she was the goddess of wisdom? Quote. Himiko's jaw dropped and Gran Torino blinked. Recovery Girl groaned. I'm too old for this. Quote. Yagi, he didn't know why but he believed her. Nahida was wiser than anyone he knew, her analogies were a bit weird but they made sense once you thought about it. And Fujin always listened to her, as if he respected her. The door flew open and Nahida came in. Faruzan, I found her. The child then noticed the other occupants in the room. Oh, well, this is surprising. Nahida tilted her head as she put the pieces together. Lady Nahida. Yagi stuttered. Not sure how to act. You found who? Quote. Nahida couldn't help but giggle. Just call me Nahida, I found his creator. A beautiful woman wearing a dark purple business suit and heels walked into the room with a bag. Her purple hair tied in a braid. What everyone noticed was how similar she looked to Fujin. You're his creator? Faruzan asked. The woman looked at Faruzan, who flinched. Be nice. Nahida frowned. Can he be fixed? Quote. Walked up to the bed and her eyes widened. With a shaking hand, she reached out and caressed his cheek. If Yagi didn't know any better, she was touching him like a mother would her child, probably the closest to it considering she created him. He looks just like her, spoke softly. She then examined his damage. Quote. I can repair him, it shouldn't take long. I created my prototypes with the ability to self-repair. That lifted a weight that Yagi didn't know he had. Wait, Wanderer was a prototype. How many more had she made? Please leave the room. Took the bag and placed it on the bed. I do not wish to be disturbed. Oh, of course, Lady A. Faruzan grabbed Himiko and left. Recovery Girl and Gran Torino left as well. Nahida grabbed Yagi's hand and guided him out. The door closed behind them. Himiko looked at Faruzan. Quote. His mom is hot. Faruzan slapped Himiko up the head. Have some respect. That's the goddess of lightning. Quote. Lightning. Excuse me, but if he's a puppet, then how does he have a quirk? Yagi asked Faruzan. The woman paused and looked at Nahida, who just nodded. Faruzan sighed. He doesn't, he's quirkless, as am I. Himiko blinked. Mom, you have a wind quirk. No, Himiko. Faruzan took out a trinket, a gem encased in a golden frame. My powers come from one of these, they're called visions. Yagi's eyes widened. Fujin has one also. He asked. Faruzan slowly nodded. Yes, but he hides his in his chest. She answered. We're both Anemo, wind, users. Faruzan explained. A vision can allow someone to use one of 7 elements. Nahida picked up. Anemo, Electro, Pyro, Geo, Cryo, Hydro and Dendro. Gran Torino narrowed his eyes. I can guess what 6 out of the 7 are, but Dendro? He asked. My element, the element of nature. Nahida smiled softly. I'm the goddess of Dendro, we're also not of this world. Himiko's eyes widened and she looked at her mom, who nodded. Nahida continued. We come from a world called Teva. Fujin and Faruzan were stranded in this world, but I found a way back. Himiko's heart dropped. Are you leaving? Himiko asked Faruzan shakily. What? No. Faruzan cupped her daughter's cheeks. Why would I leave my daughter? She asked. Himiko hugged her mother tightly. Okay, good. Please don't go. Nahida shook her head with a small smile. I found a way back months ago. Fujin and Faruzan decided to stay as they built lives here. Yagi smiled at that, then he realized something. If Fujin has an Anemo vision, how was he able to use lightning? Quote. Faruzan frowned. That's something I'm not sure of. When I saw his vision, one side had Anemo, the other had Electro. Nahida's eyes widened. It must have been his latent Electro heritage. Quote. Recovery Girl spoke up. That makes sense, his creator is the goddess of lightning. So this never happened before? Yagi asked. No, there's never been a vision with dual elements, this is exciting. Nahida's eyes sparkled. A finished the repairs, placing the tools in the bag, she looked at the puppet. He looked so similar to Makoto. She looked at the vision, one side was a Nemo, the other Electro. This was unheard of. An impossibility. She shelved that thought for later and looked over the puppet she created. She didn't know why, but, seeing this puppet thrive, it filled her with pride. She sighed, she wasn't sure what to do, she was curious about him. A small groan snapped her out of her thoughts. Wanderer opened his eyes and in his bleary-eyed state, saw a mother. So what will you tell the public? Yagi asked Faruzan. Gran Torino and Recovery Girl left just a few minutes ago. I'll tell them that Fujin is making a full recovery, if I can convince him to take a few weeks off then hopefully it won't arouse suspicion. Faruzan cupped her chin. Yagi had a feeling that would be easier said than done. There was a loud bang. Yagi, Himiko, Nahida and Faruzan rushed into the room. Fujin was awake and he looked angry. The bang came from a tray that was on the bedside table that he threw. A didn't look bothered by his outburst. Nahida sighed, she should have expected this. Uncle Fujin. Himiko launched herself at Fujin, the puppet grunted at Himiko latched onto him. Get off. Fujin growled. No. A blinked as Fujin was pushing Himiko but the girl was stuck to him like glue. You had this hole in your chest. I thought you were dead. Himiko cried. Fujin paused and then looked at the other people in the room, then at Faruzan. They know. Yes, Faruzan nodded. Keep it secret, I don't want anyone knowing. Fujin glared. Hey, you kept my secret, I'll keep yours. Yagi smiled. You look like shit. Fujin deadpanned at Yagi. You looked worse Fujin. Yagi smiled wider. That made the puppet's eye twitch. Fujin, A muttered, testing the name. It was a good name. Himiko pulled away from Fujin as the puppet got up. I am grateful for your work in repairing me. Fujin told A. A looked at Fujin. Nahida came to me, looking for my help. She told me about you and I wanted to see you for myself, she admitted. Well, you saw me, now leave. Fujin glared. Fujin. Faruzan exclaimed. Nahida was about to speak up but Yagi beat her to it. Maybe you should give her a chance. Fujin glared at Yagi. Why should I take the time to talk to someone who abandoned me? Himiko's eyes widened as she glared at A. You what? Exclamation mark. She hissed. Faruzan was just as surprised but she pulled Himiko away. Dear, please don't upset the goddess. A looked shocked at his words. Abandon, did I really do that? How can you not remember? Question mark. Himiko snarled as she tried to lunge at the goddess. Himiko, enough, Fujin said in a stern tone. It's fine, I don't expect her to remember. Himiko looked at him in shock, same with Faruzan. And, why is that? Long story short, I erased myself from existence, she wouldn't have any memories of me. Fujin sighed. Yagi's eyes went wide. How could you do something like that, why would you do that? Fujin's eyes dropped. I was a horrible person, Toshinori, I have more sins than even All for One, I'm probably worse. Himiko and Faruzan looked at Fujin in shock, they couldn't believe what they were hearing. Yagi frowned. That's probably true. He muttered. The mother and daughter looked at him. But that's not who you are anymore, is it? No, Fujin confirmed. Nahida listened with a smile. She was glad that Toshinori didn't judge Fujin for his past. A watched, and she couldn't help but wonder how much Fujin had achieved in this world. Fujin, A is very curious about you, perhaps you should give her a chance. Nahida smiled. The puppet was about to respond before his mind went to the Todoroki family. Fuyumi worked so hard to make it work and he knew she would tell him the same thing. He looked at A who was giving him a hopeful look. Very well. Wanderer sighed. But I'll decide the time and place. A looked surprised but nodded. I will be sure to be free when the time comes. Good, you can do it during your vacation. Faruzan informed him. Fujin frowned. Vacation. Were you planning on going right back to work? Faruzan narrowed her eyes. Fujin's glare was enough of an answer for her. Oh no, you're gonna take 2 weeks off. People will get suspicious if you're seen out and about. You need to take time off, there are other heroes. Faruzan told him. Yagi had a sense of déjà vu. Fujin felt the same thing and he wouldn't be a hypocrite. Alright, you make a good point. He sighed. Faruzan smiled. Good, now lay down and rest. Lady A may have repaired you but you need rest. I'm fine, Fujin retorted. He requires time to completely heal. A spoke up. His internal injuries are not fully repaired as of yet, and I needed to add new components to compensate for your new vision. Fujin frowned. New vision? He asked and then looked at the side table. He finally noticed the change on the vision. He took it and looked it over. It appears that you awakened your latent electro energy and it needed an outlet, Nahida theorized. Similar to a delusion, Fujin muttered. Another thing to explain. Wanderer sighed. Just say that it's from your mom and you unlocked it when you, yeah. Himiko trailed off as the sight of him being impaled was still in her head. A and Fujin looked at each other for a moment before Fujin looked away with a scoff. It'll be somewhat believable, quirk awakenings aren't uncommon. A frowned before she looked at Nahida. I must return, perhaps I could come back in a week's time. Nahida smiled. Of course, I'll be sure to show you how to work the ley line. Nahida turned to the others. We'll be going now, Fujin, please be careful. I'll be fine. Fujin waved her off and the two goddesses vanished. Is that normal? Yagi asked. Faruzan nodded. Don't be surprised if you see Nahida popping out of nowhere sometimes. It can get annoying, so, Mom. Is it possible for me to get a vision? Himiko asked with sparkling eyes. Fujin laid in his bed, desiring peace and quiet.
Unfortunately, this part is over. I hope you enjoyed it. My apologies for all those quotes. Please have a good morning, afternoon, evening, or night. See you next time, my dear faves.